Roger Federer won this tournament 5 times. Serena Williams ruled this court for over a decade. And yet, in more than a century of tennis royalty passing through, neither of them ever broke a ticketing system. That happened this week. 53,000 people tried to log in at once for a single third-round match. The reason was a 21-year-old from the Philippines. Think about that for a second. 127 years. That's how long the Western and Southern Open has been running in Mason, Ohio. 127 years without ever needing emergency server capacity for a match that wasn't even a final, wasn't even a semifinal, just a third round. Reports from the tournament this week say the ticketing platform was built to handle roughly 9,000 simultaneous users. Within 45 minutes of one single draw going live online, it was staring down more than 53,000 active sessions. The system didn't just get busy. It buckled. And the fallout was immediate. An outer stadium listing that had already been assigned to the match got pulled within 2 hours and swapped for a full stadium court instead. Ticket prices told the rest of the story. Before noon on the day the draw dropped, primary market prices reportedly jumped from $195 to $390. By the next morning, resale listings were hitting $500 for upper-level seats. By the end of that business day, lower bowl seats were reportedly going for $940. For a third-round match. So who is worth that kind of money before she's even played a point? Her name is Alexandra Eala. Her opponent, waiting on the other side of the net, was Amanda Anisimova, the world number 10 from the United States. To understand why a WTA 1000 third-rounder produced numbers you'd expect from a Grand Slam final, you have to go back to where this all started, and it starts somewhere you wouldn't expect. Alexandra Eala was born in Quezon City, in the Philippines. A nation of roughly 120 million people, and until recently, one with almost no track record of producing professional tennis players. She picked up a racket at age 4. Her teacher wasn't some academy coach, it was her grandfather, on a makeshift court in Manila that was, by all accounts, falling apart. Cracked surface. Missing fencing. Holes in the net. That's where it began. Her older brother, Miko Eala, trained right alongside her and later went on to become a standout collegiate player at Pennsylvania State University. By the time she was 11, her routine looked like this. Wake up at 4:45 in the morning, train before school, come back and train again in the evening. Every day. Then, at 13, Alexandra Eala and her brother made a decision most families never get the chance to make. They moved across the world to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain. That same year, in 2018, she won the Under-14 Les Petits tournament in France, one of the most prestigious junior titles in the sport, and she did it by beating Linda Noskova in the final. Yes, that Linda Noskova. The same player who would go on to become the 2026 Wimbledon champion. A 13-year-old from a country with no tennis pedigree had just beaten a future Grand Slam winner. From there, the rise was gradual, and then suddenly it wasn't. She reached the semifinals of the Miami Open as a wild card, a run that started pulling eyes toward her game. Then, in July of 2026, she became the first player from the Philippines to ever reach the second week of a Grand Slam, advancing at Wimbledon. Weeks after that, she won her first WTA Tour singles title at the Wimbledon DC Open in Washington, and she didn't just win it, she came back to do it, beating the top seed, Jessica Pegula, 4-6, 6-4, 6-0 after dropping the first set. That win made her the first Filipino player, male or female, to ever capture a WTA Tour-level singles title. It pushed her to a career-high ranking of world number 20, and she walked into the Cincinnati Open as the 17th seed, the highest seeding of her entire career at this level. But the numbers on the court only tell half the story. The other half is about who's watching. And that's where things get genuinely fascinating. The Philippines has an estimated 12 million citizens living and working outside the country. More than 4 million of them are in the United States alone, spread across cities like Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Houston, San Francisco, and Cincinnati. Nurses, logistics workers, teachers, people with jobs and shift schedules and responsibilities. And yet, reports from this season describe those same people rearranging their entire lives around Eala's matches. Swapping shifts. Booking flights months in advance. Driving hours just to watch one match and driving straight back the same night. At the Cincinnati Open specifically, there are accounts of nurses from neighboring states organizing group trips within minutes of a draw being released. Even her opponents have noticed. Amanda Anisimova, speaking after her own second-round win at the tournament, addressed the crowd she knew was coming. "I know that it's probably gonna be a very packed stadium, so, yeah, I'm sure it'll be really fun," she said. Then she added, "I love the packed stadium, and I love a good atmosphere, so, yeah, I'm sure it'll be a great match." Former pro and broadcaster Mary Jo Fernandez has pointed out that Eala is bringing an entirely new demographic and crowd into the sport. And Jessica Pegula, after losing that Washington final, turned to the crowd and said, "This is the best Monday final crowd I've seen," crediting Filipino fans directly for helping grow the sport on a global scale. This isn't a one-tournament story either. The same pattern, surging demand, packed stands, systems straining to keep up, has reportedly shown up in Toronto, Melbourne, Dubai, and London earlier this season, every single time Eala's name appeared in the draw. Venues that had run at standard capacity for years suddenly found themselves overwhelmed the moment her bracket position was announced. And that sparked a real conversation inside the sport. If a player's commercial pull doesn't track with her ranking or how deep she runs in a tournament, how are venues supposed to price and allocate tickets around her? Some industry chatter this season has floated the idea that her box office value exists almost independently of her results, meaning tournaments could see this kind of demand from her participation alone, win or lose. That's led to bigger questions about whether dynamic pricing tied to actual demand, separate from seeding, needs to become part of how tennis operates. But there's a tension buried in that idea too, because if prices rise to match demand, does that end up pricing out the very diaspora communities who created the demand in the first place? Worth noting, these are ongoing industry discussions and interpretations, not confirmed tournament financial figures. Now, let's talk about the match itself, and the two players who actually walked out on court. Amanda Anisimova, 24 years old, arrived in Cincinnati carrying one of the more compelling comeback stories in tennis. Earlier in 2026, she reached a career-high ranking of world number 3, riding the momentum of a 2025 season that included finals at both Wimbledon and the US Open, plus WTA 1000 titles in Doha and Beijing. But her road there wasn't smooth. In 2023, she stepped away from the sport entirely, citing burnout and mental health concerns, before returning to competition in 2024. Earlier this year, reflecting on her results, she said she remained hungry for more, and that she still hoped to push herself toward winning a Grand Slam. Her 2026 season, though, had been bumpier than her breakout year. A wrist injury cut short her run at the Australian Open quarterfinals. Her Wimbledon title defense ended in the third round. At the Canadian Open, she fell in the round of 16 to Belinda Bencic, 6-2, 6-2. Heading into Cincinnati, she opened with a clean straight sets win over Zeynep Sonmez, 6-2, 6-3, wrapped up in just 1 hour and 16 minutes. Eala's road to the same match, meanwhile, came with a twist of circumstance. As a seeded player, she got a first-round bye. Her second-round opponent, Elena Gabriela Ruse of Romania, was forced to retire while trailing due to a foot injury, with Eala already up 6-1, 3-0. That set up a third-round meeting with Anisimova, the first time these two had ever faced each other. Waiting on the other side was Linda Noskova, the reigning Wimbledon champion, for a spot in the quarterfinals. For Eala, there was even more on the line than that, a 5-match winning streak against top 10 opponents, part of a season that had already produced a 9-4 record against the game's best. And when the match finally happened at the Lindner Family Tennis Center, it delivered exactly the kind of battle both players' recent form promised. Eala came out swinging, taking the first set 6-4. Buried inside that set was one absurd stretch, a single-service game that dragged through 13 deuces and ran over 20 minutes before she finally closed it out. Anisimova answered in the second set, leveling things at 6-4 to force a decider. And in that final set, the match turned. Anisimova broke serve, built her lead, and closed it out 4-6, 6-4, 6-2. That result ended Eala's run against top 10 opponents for this tournament, while Anisimova moved on to face Linda Noskova in the next round. But even in defeat, the crowd inside that stadium told the same story this whole season has been telling. A significant chunk of the audience was there for Eala, cheering for the Filipino player even as Anisimova competed on home soil in the United States. For Anisimova, the win keeps her season pointed toward the US Open, where she was a finalist in 2025 before losing to Aryna Sabalenka. She's made clear that 2 Grand Slam finals aren't her ceiling, and that she's still learning from past setbacks to push further. Up next in Cincinnati, Linda Noskova, the Wimbledon champion, in the round of 16. For Eala, the loss closes out her run in Cincinnati, but it caps a hard-court stretch that included her first WTA Tour title in Washington and a run to the 4th round in Toronto at the Canadian Open. That stretch carried her to a career-high ranking of world number 20 heading straight into the US Open, one of the biggest stages tennis has to offer. And here's the thing, None of what happened this week changes what's been building all season. Sold-out sessions. Reassigned courts. Fans organizing their lives around her name before a draw is even finalized. That pattern has followed her to every single tournament she's entered, and one third-round result isn't going to undo it. So the real question coming out of Cincinnati isn't really about this one match. It's whether tennis's infrastructure, built over decades around ranking-based attendance, can actually keep up with a player whose pull doesn't move in step with her seeding. That question isn't going away. And it's probably going to resurface the next time Alexandra Eala's name shows up on a bracket. If you want to see how this same story played out at other stops this season, Washington, Toronto, Wimbledon, drop a comment and let me know which one you want covered next. Like the video, subscribe for more, and stick around, because coming up next is a similar look at the fan following building around Brazilian player João Fonseca on the men's tour.